But in interpersonal relationships, there is so much a sense of kind of personal competition that comes up kind of as a natural outflow maybe of the way we were raised.
Oh yeah, it's definitely that.
So if I'm right, that means you have to be wrong if you have a different point of view. Or
wait a minute. Let me take that one first.
Okay.
It only means that if you decide it means that.
Right.
Okay?
I think that's what Safishi is related to too, is that idea that, like when you have people in situations that, where one person is saying, well, I'm never wrong, so I'm right. Therefore, if you have a different opinion, that opinion has to be wrong. It's a dialectic reality.
But see, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm always right, and I'm never wrong, but you can be right too if you want to. We can be right in different ways. There's always another way to do anything. There's always another way to look at anything. We don't have to compete with our rightness. See? It's an infinite universe. So it was a good point to bring up. But one person being right does not automatically make another one wrong. There's the comparison thing again. We don't have to compare in that way. We don't have to compare in a negative judgment. Sometimes it's useful to compare different things so that we notice their differences for a positive purpose. We do not have to compare in a negative way.
How would you relate that to children when you're speaking with your children?
Right.
I've got two boys that just love to say you're right and I'm wrong and this kind of stuff, and I'm always trying to help them out with that. How can I give them more of this philosophy on that point of neither one of you have to be wrong or neither one of you have to be right, or
Well, what they're trying to do, and they're probably learning it in school and every place else, but they're basically trying to assert themselves, trying to get a sense of personal power, trying also to get a sense of approval. Okay? And this is the way they are learning how to do it. This is not an easy thing always, but the more a sense of more sense of approval that you can give them and support them with, and the more a sense of personal power that you can instill in them, the less they will be affected by that kind of thing. Okay? In this kind of society that we have today, until they start having enough knowledge to work it out on their own, they won't be completely separated from that. But more confidence you can give them, the more approval that you can give them in a way that makes them believe it's real, the less they'll be trying to make each other right or wrong. Okay? And the less they'll think of that as an important issue. Because those two things that everybody basically wants. They want approval and they want effectiveness. Okay? Control is a technique, okay? Not always a good one. So it's not control that people want. They want effectiveness. The more confident they feel, the more effective they'll be. The more approved they feel, loved, okay, the more emotionally satisfied they'll be. And they won't need to seek it in distorted ways. Like I said, it's not easy. But this knowledge says that there are no limits, which means even how you think about them is affecting them. So it's not enough just to say the right words, but try and have that kind of thought and try and have that kind of feeling about them. Okay? Give them, if you can, anything that you can find to approve, to compliment, that they do right. Give that a lot of importance. It's curious, got to mention this because it shows how the society is and the kinds of ideas that we have to deal with. I was watching a program on television about basically a good program about some of the ways that people are using for emotional healing. And one of the things that was taught, these are for, this was mainly obsessive compulsive people and people who are overeating and these kinds of things. And one of the techniques that they said was very effective was approval. Giving the person lots of approval for doing the right thing. And the most amazing thing, the announcer who was the reporter who was reporting on this process and this technique made a statement which is so typical of what we find, because he said, but it's a terrible difficulty to do such repetitive and mind-numbing approval all the time, when it's so much more natural. It's so much more natural for parents to look at the negative side and to try and correct what's wrong. As if that isn't repetitive and mind-numbing, right? How interesting the attitude. And so there's a lot of that attitude out there. Okay. The other is more natural because it's easier. That just means they learned it better. Okay. But using the other one is what has been bringing these people back from their problems. In combination sometimes with medicine, but they were showing how one bit of medicine was helping certain kinds of people with phobias, and it was having a good effect. They were helping about a third of the people. And then they just sort of briefly threw in this other one where they were using behavior modification, helping the people actually change their behavior about what they feared, and they were getting 70 to 80% effectiveness. But they didn't dwell on that one very long. Okay. But that's much more powerful. If you combine the two, someday they'll ever feel that the mind and body are connected. Why, that'll be very powerful.